We have lots of NHL news and rumors to take a look at here this evening, including a potential trade we might see between Montreal and Columbus. Plus, the regular season actually kicked off today with the Global Series game with the Sabres and Devils over in Prague. We'll review that game, plus take a look at what's coming up next for them. Plus, we have lots of other more news from the NHL waiver wire, a signing in Vegas, a new captain in Utah, and lots of other news around the NHL coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to talk about here today. A couple of things. First, the regular season officially kicked off today, even though it doesn't really feel like it. It's different for those of us in North America, given the time difference to Europe and the fact that the Sabres and Devils are over in Prague. The North American leg of the regular season, the traditional part of it, will kick off here in a few days. But the Sabres and the Devils did play. I know for most of us it was going to be around 1 or 2 o'clock this afternoon with the time difference. The Devils ended up winning 4-1 over the Buffalo Sabres. So Sheldon Keefe wins his coaching debut with the Devils. Jacob Markstrom had a really good game for New Jersey. Made a highlight reel save early on. You saw early goals from Stefan Nason, who gets the first goal of the regular season. Nico Hischier, Jonathan Kovacevic also scored for the Devils. Owen Power picked up a goal for the Buffalo Sabres as well. So overall, just great to see the regular season back and in action. Of course, they will have another game coming up here tomorrow. So the Global Series will wrap up and then they'll make their way back, of course, to North America. And with the NHL regular season kicking off today, that means we also got access for the first time to the NHL Face-Off series that was on Amazon Prime, which was released today. I know I tried binge watching most of it. I didn't get through all of it yet, but out of the 6 episodes, I think I'm almost done number 5. I had to stop to do some other things, but really good content. I highly recommend you check it out. I know if you're not an Amazon Prime member, if you don't have that subscription, you can probably get a free trial to at least check it out. You got lots of great episodes, lots of insight behind the scenes on a lot of great NHL players. Clearly, the first episode focuses on the friendship and rivalry of William Nylander and David Pastrnak. You've got Philip Forsberg in one of the episodes as well, and Jack Eichel. There's a captain's episode which focuses on Landeskog, Quinn Hughes, as well as Jacob Trouba. Then, of course, big focus, of course, on McDavid and Matthew Tkachuk in the final. Jeremy Swayman's in there as well. Lots to look at. So lots of interesting stuff. I know the Leafs in Bruins series. A lot of you probably remember when the Leafs were starting to struggle late in that series with the incident that you kind of saw Nylander, Matthews, and Marner kind of bickering and fighting on the bench a little bit. Nylander was mic'd up for that series, so it was all caught with good audio, so we can actually get a more clear-cut, defined confirmation of what was said. And it kind of sounds to me that the comments about the "stop crying, bro" that Nylander said, to me, it kind of sounds like that might have been directed as much or more at Matthews as it was Marner. I know Marner kind of got all the flack for being the one that was accused of whining and crying, so to speak, but I think it was directed at the very least at both of them, if not at Matthews. And yeah, anyway, some interesting, great content. I really hope they continue to do additional seasons. I've been really enjoying it so far. I think it gives you really good insight to some of these top superstar players. I know for those of you who haven't seen it, I think you'll look at Connor McDavid a lot differently. You'll see a lot more of that passion. He acknowledges that some people think he's boring or a robot, so to speak, but you get to see the inside of the dressing room after Game 7 when they lost the Stanley Cup, and I tell you, he's pretty raw, emotional, and at the same time, shows a lot more leadership behind in the room that a lot of us don't get to see. So it really gives you a whole different perspective on some of these players. So certainly highly recommend you check it out if you haven't had a chance to do so here already. Some other news around the NHL today. A couple of injuries in Columbus are going to cause them to be further depleted on their roster. Boone Jenner got hurt in practice the other day. He's going to be out for a little while and most likely isn't going to be able to start the season. And Dmitry Voronkov is going to be out longer term as well. So the injuries continue to pile up here for Columbus. So again, we're going to talk about the Jackets a little bit later, a potential deal with Montreal. I do think that there's some dealings there that could help both sides. Another story we found out today, which I certainly want to wish him the best, but Jack Campbell, who's currently signed with the Detroit Red Wings, has entered the NHLPA Player Assistance Program. So, of course, Campbell been around a long time, had a good run in Toronto. Not so great run with the Edmonton Oilers. Found himself bought out, ends up in Detroit. But even before all that, even before he landed in Toronto, he was with the Kings for a while. But before that, a lot of people don't remember how high he was drafted by the Dallas Stars. He took a long time to go from being that pick to even landing a regular spot with the LA. So, he went through a lot, and he's got a well-documented stuff in the past that he's kind of struggled with. So I don't know what he's dealing with right now. Obviously, all that's private and confidential, but I think it's fair to say that regardless of what you think of him as a goaltender, as a player, we've seen enough of Campbell, especially during his time with the Leafs, that I think everybody can say he's just seems like a real good person, a real good, genuine dude. So I really hope that whatever he's dealing with, that he gets the help he's looking for and can overcome it and can get back to playing. It's hard to say when he's going to return to Detroit, because at this point, they're out indefinitely is what they're considered until they get cleared through this program. So I want to wish Jack Campbell the absolute best and hope that everything goes well for him during his time away from the game. As I mentioned as well in yesterday's video, as you can probably tell, I am battling a cold, or I'm not sure exactly what I've got going on here, but I've been quite sick the last few days, so if my voice starts to crack or change throughout the videos, and you'll certainly know why, but we'll do our best here to get through everything. Lots of players more on waivers today. No more waiver claims. Everybody from yesterday cleared, but we got a bunch more here, including Boston having Jordan Osterley, Michael DiPietro, and Vinny Lettieri. Florida has Will Lockwood on waivers. The Ducks have Jansen Harkins. The Maple Leafs have Alex Steves. Washington has Ethan Bear and Michael Scarbosa. Ethan Bear might be a real interesting one to watch. He's making $2 million though, so that might be a deterrent for some teams. But he is, or at least in the past, has been a decent right shot defenseman. So we'll see. He might be a name to watch here out of this group. Hard to say, but there's also some interesting young names with Pittsburgh, including Emil Bemstrom, former Blue Jacket, St. Poulin, Ludwig, Koppinen, Gruden, and Kroll. The Flyers have Richard and Lixell. The Devils have Max Millman, Nathan Legare, and Justin Dowling. So lots of names on waivers. The main one I'm watching really is Ethan Bear. I'm not really sure. Maybe Bemstrom or Poulin. You never know. I wouldn't be completely shocked, but it's not the time of year where you get a lot of waiver claims. So we'll see how things play out on that front. Some other roster moves on. One that was a bit surprising, but the San Jose Sharks have demoted one of their prized possessions and prized acquisitions, I should say, of the offseason, goaltender Yaroslav Askarov. He's been demoted down to the American Hockey League. Now, I do believe he's been battling some injuries. I don't think he's played much or at all in the preseason, so this very well could be short term. But at the same time, I don't think it's something the Sharks were really, scared or opposed to do if they felt it was right. Because at the end of the day, his big gripe to get out of Nashville was the fact that UC Saros signed a long-term deal, and there was no path to being a number one. And then they signed, Wedgwood for multiple years as well as the backup, so there was no short-term plan or path to get to the NHL. Whereas here, they've only got Vanacek and Blackwood. They don't have either of them signed long term. He can probably outplay at least one of them. Though he knows that even if he does have to spend a little time in the American League this year, that either during the season, if not next year for sure, that he'll likely be a full-time NHLer. So I don't think it's going to cause any issues, and I don't think it's really anything they're too worried about. So we will see how things play out for him, but I think more than anything it's health-related, so we'll have to monitor that situation. So a lot of people are making a big deal of it, a big surprise. For me, I'm not completely shocked. I'm not really surprised this happened at all. Now, besides the players on waivers, lots of other players besides Askarov were also cut today, including the Maple Leafs made a bunch of cuts, including Blandisi, Grabenkin, Hervonen, Alex Nylander, Cedric Pare, Kokkonen, Topi Nimula, Cade Weber, among others, that were all sent down to their American Hockey League affiliate. Now, one player who has played himself into a contract is Tanner Pearson. Of course, Vegas, after getting the cap relief on Robin Lehner, put it to good use, signing Tanner Pearson to a one-year deal at league minimum $775,000. So he went to camp there in a PTO and turned it into a contract. Artem Anisimov, longtime NHL player, has announced his retirement from the game of hockey. Before he announced his retirement, he wanted to exhaust all options and resources to continue his career, which he's done. He's played 13 years in the NHL, including 376 points over 771 career games. I know he had a good run with a number of teams, but Anisimov was at one point was a really solid player. So he certainly had a pretty decent career, and should be proud of his efforts there. So I want to wish him the best in whatever comes next for him. The Utah Hockey Club, they have their very first captain in franchise history, and not shocked at all in who they've selected, and it's Clayton Keller. Of course, Clayton Keller was a longtime Arizona Coyote, arguably their best player most of the time, and during the last few years of their time in Arizona, of course, he makes the move with the team to Utah, to Salt Lake City, and he's got a long-term contract. Obviously a really good player, showing good leadership, a good young player as well who can be there for a long stretch. So I think they made a good choice on who to put the C on. I knew that was something that the team was looking at to do. We know they want to make big strides this year and really impress that new fan base in the state of Utah and city of Salt Lake City. So obviously bringing in some bigger name players, naming a captain and really taking this team in a big step forward is something that Ryan Smith and the ownership group there really wants to do. So we're now down to only one NHL team that does not have a captain. Do you know who that is? I'll give you a second to think about it. It is the Seattle Kraken. So the Kraken originally did have a captain with Mark Giordano. Of course, he was traded at the end of the first season to the Toronto Maple Leafs, and they have never replaced that with a new C on any jersey there. So we'll see if they take the plunge and we actually have 32 captains in the NHL this year. It'll be the first time in quite some time. Actually, it might even be the first time we actually have 32, because during Seattle's tenure of being the 32nd franchise, there was always at least a few teams that didn't have one. So, it could be the first time that we get that if they go ahead and make that move, which I'm not completely sure if they're going to or not at this point. Now, on the trade front, I want to talk about a possibility of an option I was looking at online earlier. So, obviously, we know that Montreal and Columbus are two teams that very well could help each other. We've talked about this on a few occasions, and I really think it's something that they should explore doing. We know Columbus has an exception that they don't have to be cap compliant on opening night, obviously because of the injuries they have and because of the unfortunate loss of Johnny Gaudreau. Their team is really in a unique situation here, and they do have some time that the NHL has given them to become cap compliant. So they do need to take on at least another player, ideally maybe even two, and because of the injuries, and they do have to take on some more salary. But they have a little bit of time to do that. So Montreal has an abundance of forwards. They have lots of youth that are pushing for spots. So because of that, we already knew that there was a potential fit there. But then, of course, in the last, probably 3 or 4 days here, we've seen some really emotional preseason games between Montreal and Toronto and Montreal and Ottawa. So we've seen things really boil over. We've seen lots of physicality. We've seen lots of fights. And I know with the Ottawa game the other night, when Arbor Jackeye come along and took out Timmy Stützle, all heck broke loose after that, with Brady Tkachuk going after Jackeye, and it just, chaos ensued. We later had Ridley Gregg and Kirby Dach going at it. And I know earlier in that game, Ridley was kind of stirring things up, which is what he does. He's a pain in the butt to play against, and that's just how Ridley rolls. It's just that simple. But at the end of the day, Georges Larac, of course, analyst in Quebec, and obviously talks about the Canadiens a lot on the radio, was commenting that Marty St. Louis, even though the head coach of the Canadiens, of course, even though Jackeye put the team in a bad situation penalty-wise, and Ottawa went on a major long power play and ended up winning the game from the goals they scored there, but he was still happy with Jackeye's play and the fact that he, stood up for his teammate, because I guess they viewed things as the fact of what Ridley Gregg was doing earlier in the game. They decided they're going to respond by going after one of Ottawa's better players. So he, basically chicken wings Timmy Stützle. Now, at the end of the day, his elbow is up, in my opinion, and I'm not going to debate that, but he did end up hitting Stützle's stick into his face, and, obviously it looked a lot worse than what it was when it first happened. But at the end of the day, Jack-Eye is probably the only guy in that team that's really wired that way. So what they were talking about on the radio was, as much as Marty St. Louis appreciated his play and was happy with him, that he shouldn't have to be the one to do it all the time, and it would be nice if they had somebody in the forward group who could maybe respond in the same sort of way. And they haven't had that type of player in a while. I know at one point they had Nick Delorier, but that was quite some time ago. So they were talking about, maybe they should look to add a player like that. So then, of course, fans started chirping in online on Twitter, on X, and suggesting again Montreal and Columbus. Like, what about Matthew Olivier? Columbus could use a forward or two. They need to take on salary. Well, Montreal could look to move on from some salary. So guys like Christian Dvorak and Josh Anderson come your prime candidates. We know there's young players on this team that are kind of pushing for spots here, whether it be Kapanen or Beck or, these other guys that are, Joshua Ross looking like he's going to take a spot. They could move on from some of these veteran guys because they still have lots of other veterans within the lineup anyway, and maybe get a guy like that back from Columbus while shipping out some different type of players their way that could help fill some holes for them and at the same time give them more salary. So it could be a win-win for both sides. And, to be honest, I think it's a scenario that they probably really should explore. Now, should Montreal look to have more of an enforcer type forward in the lineup? Probably. It wouldn't hurt. I mean, it seems like you look through the division in the Atlantic, and most teams have that type of player. So, it helps to have more than one guy in your team who can be the guy to respond or the guy to drop the gloves, because you can't expect them to do it every single night all the time. And in Montreal's case, where they have so many defensemen, I don't know what their plans are going to be for Jack-Eye. I don't know if he's going to play all the time or if he'll be in and out of the lineup or what have you. That they just might have some more options for how they structure their lineup from time to time. And like I said, it's a lot of pressure for one person to have to do that. So, obviously that's a type of trade to me that would make a lot of sense. Like I said, Montreal, if they can get themselves to be in a better cap situation to start the season and bring in a player like that, I think they'd be better served. So might not move a guy like Dvorak, especially where he's on an expiring deal, for a guy like Olivier. You save some cap space, but then you get a different kind of player who can help your team. So let me know what your thoughts are on that type of trade. Would help Columbus. You could even throw in more than one player if you really want to sweeten the deal for Columbus to give you the player that you want. So we'll see what happens at the end of the day. They have some tough decisions to make to fill out their roster here in the coming days before the NHL regular season gets fully underway throughout the entire all 32 teams, because obviously we only have the teams in Europe right now. Everybody else gets started later on the weekend and further into next week. So that's all for today. Obviously, we'll try to save my voice here for tomorrow. Hopefully things are getting a little bit better. But yeah, that's your news and rumors for today. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.